It has been since 20 years or more, I think maybe 3 or 4 decades, that microfinance has been a very important issue, especially to improve the woman economic empowerment. Most of the credits are for if you are sick, for the school of the children, and maybe for a little entrepreneur. Microfinance has been the ideology to help people to think that they can be entrepreneurs, but that's not true. I am Alicia Girón. I am an economist. I work in the UNAM, which is National Autonomous University of Mexico, and I am in the Economic Research Institute. So in 1994, after the banking crisis in Mexico, we decided what will happen with women. How we can link the financial crisis, the banking financial crisis, with women. So we began working with some colleagues that works gender. And it is very interesting when you link all the austerity public policies that we had had to gender issues. If you want to empower women, you have to relate that with public policies. Most of the microfinance institutions gets the money not about common people. They are linked to private banks, and they are even linked to big banks, too big to fail, too big to rescue. So this is part of a change in the banking system, because when they erase, for example, in countries like in Mexico, like in most countries of Latin America, you erase the development banks. So these microfinance institutions arrive and are part of the regulation of many countries, but they are not very well regulated. So many of that money came from these big banks through them, and they don't have regulation in the interest rates. I think this is very important, because even after the financial crisis, these microfinance institutions, most of them were broken. I have seen this also in La Paz, in Bolivia. They have a lot of NGOs and a lot of microfinance institutions, but all these people receive the credit, but they are in a cooperative. They used to make, for example, sweaters or scarves or whatever. But what happens when the market, when you just can sell that stuff that you produce? You just can pay the credit. And so the microfinance institution will be broken, or it will be erased. When you ask me, well, what is the link, or how you can link these austerity policies with gender, is because with austerity policies, you don't have employment for the people. If you don't have employment, even if you are an entrepreneur, to whom are you going to sell your stuff when nobody can buy it? Austerity policies are very linked to these microfinance institutions, are linked with the microcredits, are linked with the high profits of the microfinance, because it is another way to take more profits of the big banks. One of the things that I want to explain is that I'm not against women economic empowerment, but the problem is that you must have at least development banks for these projects. In Mexico, we have had since the 80s, but especially more in the 90s, programs to finish with poverty. They go to the little towns where they are very, very poor to give these microcredits. They go to these little towns, they try to involve people, and most of them, they achieve big groups of women. That's another cultural problem, that when the woman receives the credit, the man or the partner or the husband asks for the money. And this is not in Mexico, also is part of the Latin America culture, but also in Bangladesh, most of those credits brings a lot of problems to the family. It's big process to involve more women economic empowerment, but also the question is how you are going to break all this cultural path. I don't have the answer, but I think that the key for development, for economic development, is a more participation of the state by the development banks and a big participation of the society, and really in these little groups where poverty is very high.